So in this lecture, we'll be continuing our discussion of personal identity, right? And take a look at three different theories for what might be the essential property that makes you the same you over time. Okay, so we started out this discussion by taking a look at the real life case of Tukey Williams and asked, was the person that committed gruesome murders and a member of a gang in 79 the same person? Here we're talking about numerical identity. Was it the same person as the person who was executed in 2005? So, what is the thing that makes somebody the same over time? For a lot of us, intuitively, we'll say, well, it's my body, right? It's the fact that my body is still here. So, let's define the body theory of personal identity. This says a person at one time is the same person as a person at a later time if and only if they have the very same living material body. So this is kind of how we know that when we wake up, we're still here, right? We take a look at the mirror, or we can see our hands, or right, somebody recognizes us. Well, how they recognize us? Because we have the same body, right? The same living material body. So very intuitive, seems compatible with our common sense understanding, our common sense way of discussing personal identity. If we take a look, you might have said something like, well, we know it's the same Tukey over time because the fingerprints are the same. We know the DNA is the same, right? We can take a look at photos and see that Tukey now is identical to Tukey back then. Yeah? Can you think of problems with this theory? Problems with personal identity? Well, what if a perfect person suffers from severe brain damage and is left in a vegetative state? So somebody gets into an accident or has a stroke, or something occurs where they're, for all intents and purposes, no longer themselves, but now they're in a vegetative state that's only being kept alive by a respirator, by a breathing machine. And the doctor tells you, I'm sorry, your loved one has brain damage and will be in this state forever. They will no longer wake up. Would you say your loved one is still with you, or are they now gone? If you are a body theorist, you might have to say, I guess they're still with me because their body is still alive. But does that fit with your intuition about your loved one? What if the person suffers from complete amnesia? So they're still alive, but because of their stroke or because of their accident, they don't remember anything. Remember who they are, don't remember who you are. What does your intuition say? Does your intuition say they're still the same person, right? If you're a body theorist, you have to say it's the same person still because the body is still the same. But does that feel right? If you're a body theorist, you have to account for this question. Well, what percentage of the body has to be here for me to still be me? Half of it? 70% of it still has to be here? How much? Because if I lose half my body mass from a diet, I go from 350 pounds to 150 pounds, well, half of me is kind of gone. Does that mean I'm no longer here? What's the percentage? 90%? Because if you take a look at you now versus you 60 years ago, how much of that body has changed? How much of that body is still here? Which brings to another question. What characteristics about the body makes you you? Is it the height of this body? Is it the weight of this body? Is it the color of this body? Doesn't this body continually change over time where none of these things stay the same? Would you still be considered you if you lost weight, if you got taller, if you got changed skin color because of being out in the sun too long? What's the essential property of the body that has to be there for you still to be you? Right? This is a question for the body theorist to answer. And related to this is there any particular body part which is most critical and why? Right? Is it your heart that's most critical, which means if you had a heart transplant, you're no longer you? Is it your eyes that are most critical, where if you became blind and had them removed, you're no longer you? Is it your hands? I mean, what is it? And why is it really the body? I mean, let's take a look at some of these things we may have brought up in the Tukey Williams case. I mean, fingerprints. If I burned off all my fingerprints, am I no longer me? If my fingerprints are gone, if that's who I am, then am I a different person if I lose my hands or lose my feet and no longer have my toe prints? Your DNA, well, your DNA is in every cell of your body. Every time you take a shower and scrub yourself, right, there are cells going everywhere. Every time you spit, there's cells going. Your DNA is all over the floor. It's all over the sink. It's through your drain. Where are you if your DNA is who you are? Is your DNA in the sewer right now? Is your DNA on the? Are you on the floor right now? Are you in the sewer right now? If that's the thing that makes you you, well, this leads people like John Locke, who you read for today, to question this notion that we are our bodies. Right? Instead, John Locke posits a different theory. John Locke says, no, 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 it's not our bodies for many of the same objections we just mentioned. Right? It can't be our bodies. When I think of who I am, when I reflect upon what it means to be me, it's not necessarily my body that I'm thinking about. It's something much more fundamental. So what is it that John Locke believes is the essential property that makes us numerically identical to us from earlier? Well, let's do a hypothetical scenario here. So in philosophy, we often have these things called thought experiments. They are scenarios that we ask people to think about that brings them outside of their normal lives. Because when you think about something in relationship to your normal life, there's often a lot of biases, right? A lot of cultural sort of unconscious biases that make us maybe unable to see a philosophical issue very objectively. So we have the thought experiments, which takes us out into some extraordinary sort of scenario to have a more objective look at the issue. Okay, so here's a thought experiment. Jenny, 35 years old, is a Caucasian mother of Jacob, and she has a serious car accident and is seriously injured. In order to keep her alive, doctors have to remove her uninjured brain from her skull and transplant it into the body of a 25-year-old African American woman recently dead from a brain tumor. The operation is a success. Okay? So, in this situation, would you tell Jacob his mother was still alive? What would your intuition say? Jenny, 35-year-old Caucasian mother of Jacob, right? You take her brain, still working, put her brain into a body that's still functioning. Would you tell Jacob his mother was still alive? For a lot of us, our intuition says yes, right? Our intuition says yes, because when Jacob's mother, or, when this 25-year-old woman with the brain of Jacob's mother wakes up, they're going to act and respond and have a awareness that seemingly is that of the 35-year-old who was in the accident, right? So if you're a body theorist, you'd have to say, no, it's not really the same person because the body is different, right? So if this is Jacob's mother that was in the accident, take her brain, put it into a new body, and then this is who comes home to see Jacob. What would your intuition say? So this person that has an eerie resemblance to Halle Berry comes to Jacob's house. Hey, I'm home, son. Let's go. Let me take you to soccer practice today, like I promised. Would you tell Jacob that's not your mom, or would you go, yeah, yeah, that's your mom with just a new body? If your intuition says no, that's Jacob's mom, just in a new body, then maybe the body theory isn't what you believe in. This is what Locke says, right? There's more to it than just the body. Let's take it more extreme. If this is Jacob's mother and she was in an accident, We take her brain, transplant it into this much healthier body, and then this is who comes home to Jacob. Would you say, Jacob, uh, uh, we've talked to your we've talked to your mom. We drove her home from the hospital. She's here now, but prepare for the shock. Or would you say, hey, Jacob, we picked up this other woman from the hospital. She's here now. It's not your mom, though. Where would you lean? If we still have the sense that it's still Jacob's mom, regardless of how dramatically different the body is, then maybe we're not into the body theory. Again, this is Locke's position, right? So what is it? What is it that makes us us over time? Well, one more hypothetical. Let's say you wake up, you look into a mirror, and you do not recognize what's staring back at you. But you touch yourself and you see in the mirror the image touch themselves, and then you walk downstairs and you see a reflection in the window, and you touch yourself and it doesn't feel like what you normally feel when you touch yourself. Like my arm is so weird. Or you look at your skin color, oh, that's totally different. Or it's like all wrinkly now. And would you go wake up all of your family members and go, intruder in the house, come arrest this person, get them out of here? Or would you go, hey guys, wake up, something crazy happened, I changed bodies? If your intuition says the latter, it's still you, but in a different body, then what do you think you believe is the essential property for personal identity? Well, for somebody like John Locke, it's memory. It's the fact that you remember having gone to sleep, right? You remember having put the covers over your body before, lying in bed, while lying in bed. Right? When Jacob's mom comes home, it's still Jacob because she remembers everything. She remembers all the experiences she had with Jacob when he was a kid. She remembers getting into the accident, right? She remembers. What makes you the same person now that started this recording? You share the same memories, right? You have a memory of being that person who said, wow, I'm so excited to watch this lecture, and press play. So what's the memory theory? It says a person at one time is the very same person as a person at a later time if and only if the person at the later time remembers experiences of the person at the earlier time. What makes you the same person now that enrolled in the class before the term began? You remember doing it, right? You are tied to that person because you share a memory. Isn't that, doesn't that make sense to you? Isn't that just like intuitive as to who you are and what makes you you, right? Here are some intuitive examples to hammer home the gut sense that maybe it is our memory. Let's say 20 years down the line, or I don't know how old you are, but let's assume you're just out of high school. 20 years down the line, you come back to your high school reunion, right? And there's a bunch of people there that have gray hair now, maybe some pot bellies, and you just don't recognize any of them. And one person comes up to you and goes, hey, Joe, good to see you. And you're looking at them and you don't recognize them. They don't look like anybody you went to school with. It's 20 years later, right? But then you start talking to this person and they talk about, hey, yeah, I remember I sat behind you in Mrs. Johnson's English class and we used to throw spitballs at at each other. You didn't really like me back then, but I've grown up now and I'm way cooler of a person. And then you go, oh yeah, I remember that. I remember you. Isn't it the memory that makes them the same person? The fact that they remember having thrown a spitball at you 20 years earlier, isn't that what makes them the same person? Not their body, because their body is obviously changed. Another intuitive example. Let's say I am going to offer you $1 million. Would you take it? Right? I'm not gonna bite your hand. I'm not gonna I'm not going to make you sign a document signing away your firstborn kid. Uh, I'm going to give you $1 million right now. You don't have to worry about food ever again. You don't have to worry about living expenses ever again. You don't have to worry about paying for school ever again. You might even want to work for anymore. Maybe you'll use $1 million and just invest it and you'll be fine for the rest of your life. I'll never take that $1 million away from you. Would you take it? Okay, for a lot of us, sure, I'll take the $1 million. I could use it. But what if I told you that once you touch the money, you lose all of your memory? Having second doubts now, huh? Right? If you lost all of your memory once you took the $1 million, it doesn't feel like you're there anymore, right? It feels like you're no longer around. It feels like you no longer exist. So this is what Locke believed. Locke believed it's not body, it's this awareness, right? This awareness that remembers myself at an earlier time. That's what persists through time. But let's think about this. We're going to find some of the same questions, same types of questions, are going to have to be answered by the memory theorists that have to be answered by the body theorists. Okay, so let's say you go visit your father or mother who's suffering from Alzheimer's. Okay, so they suffer from Alzheimer's, which means they lose their memory, they don't recognize people in their lives. So you go visit your dad today, and you have a conversation with your dad. Hey, man, I'm glad to see you're doing okay. I'll come back to you tomorrow. You come back tomorrow, and they just don't recognize you because they're having one of those episodes. This person you're talking to, you recognize as your dad, but they don't remember having spoken to you the previous day. Is that still your dad? If you're a memory theorist, you'd say, no, I guess not, because he's not tied to the guy I visited yesterday through memory, because he has no memories of yesterday. Does that fit right with you? If you suffer from amnesia and lose all of your memory, does that mean all of your property is up for grabs? Right? So you worked hard all your life, you get a car, you buy a house, then you have amnesia. If you no longer exist, does that mean you no longer own the house, the car, if you are your memory? Right? The you that wakes up without any memory of having owned those things, do you no longer have a right to them? Again, as we talked about with the body theory, the memory theorist has to ask or answer the question of how much of my memory has to still be here, right? Is it most of it? Is it some of it? Do I just have to remember one thing? Most memory theorists will just say you have to have some episodic memory of a previous self. So you have to remember something, right, of a previous self. That gives you enough of a tie. But how much of that thing do you have to remember? Like, do I have to remember all the colors? Do I have to remember where everything was in the room? Like, how much do I need to remember? That's a question they have to answer. How about the idea of false memories? I mean, we see problems with this all the time. We look at court cases and trials, right? That over time, because of talking to people and having new experiences, we can start to develop a false memory of the past. So if you have a memory today of having gone to Disneyland when you were a kid, right? Let's say you remember going to Disneyland when you were 5, and then we ask your parents, so yeah, Bobby told me about how you guys went to Disneyland when he was 5. And they go, yeah, we didn't really go to Disneyland. We just told him we did, and we told him that the rides were great. Mickey looked like this, and there's a lot of kids. We gave him lots of pictures, described lots of different memories, and told him, yeah, you just don't remember, Bobby. You just don't remember that we went when we were 5. So that eventually he started to believe he actually did go. then then is Bobby now not the same person that grew up with his parents at the age of 5, because Bobby now has a memory that didn't exist when he was 5? How about 2-year-old you versus you at your current age? Do you remember anything of being 2 years old? And if you do, wow, congratulations. How about when you were 1 month old? Do you remember anything about being a month old? Because if you say you don't, then if you're a memory theorist, you technically have to say, then I guess those baby pictures don't show me, right? I guess I'm not there in those photos of my birth because I don't remember it. But does that fit with you? Does that make sense to you that that's not you in the photo? Or how about you of like, January 10th of 2005 at 10 a.m.? Do you remember anything that happened that day? If you don't, then did you not exist on that day? If this feels weird to you, if there's something off, then maybe it's not the memory theory. Well, what else could it be? Well, maybe say a lot of philosophers, it's psychological continuity. So this says a person at one time is the very same person as a person at a later time, if and only if the person at the later time is psychologically continuous with the person at the earlier time. Now, for a lot of these theories and a lot of these definitions, right, we have all these big words and convoluted sentences to describe something that maybe might not be so complex. So let's draw this out graphically to get a better sense for how this works, right? So let's say you are around in 1970. You have a bunch of experiences, you create a bunch of memories, right? Then later on in your life, in 1980, we ask you about being around in 1970. And you go, oh yeah, man, that was a great year. That's the year like I bought my first TV and I had my first girlfriend. Well, because you have a memory, right, of an experience you had in 1970, the memory theory says person at stage A in 1970 is numerically identical to the person at stage B, right? Because they are tied by a direct memory. So the memory theory says same person. But let's go further on. Let's say you live your life and now here we are in 2020 and you're taking this class and I'm asking you, hey, do you remember you from 1980? And you go, oh yeah, I remember the 80s. I remember voting for Reagan, and I remember buying my first glove to be like Michael Jackson. Okay, well you have a memory now of 1980, so there's a direct memory that ties you to the you that was around 1980. So we say you right now are identical to you in 1980, right? But this is like 50 years since 1970. And maybe you don't really have that good of a memory, so much so that you don't really remember much of 1970. According to memory theory, you right now are not the person that was around 1970. But the psychological continuity theory says, no, 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 you're still that person because you are linked by chains of memory to that person that was here in 1970. All right. So if you take a look at your screen, the person to 2020 is linked to the person in 1980 from a direct memory. But we also know that the person in 1980 was linked by direct memory to the person in 1970. So because all of those are linked, there's a way of tracing linked memories from you today to you in 1970. Psychological continuity says same person. So let's think about this in terms of the 2-year-old example. Let's say you don't remember anything about being two, but you remember something about like 5 minutes ago. You remember you're here watching the video, right? So you're linked to that person 5 minutes ago. And that person 5 minutes ago, if we ask them, hey, do you remember something about 5 minutes ago? They go, yeah, yeah, I remember I sat down with a cup of coffee to watch this video 5 minutes ago. And if we ask that person if they remember something 5 minutes ago, they go, yeah, yeah, I remember something, right? Can you see how we can follow a link, a chain of memories that eventually leads to you being two? That is how psychological continuity justifies saying you in the photograph of you being born, that is the same person as you today. And it has nothing to do with the fact that you can't remember yourself. It has nothing to do with the fact that you remember being two or being born. It has to do everything with the fact that we can link you through successive chains of continuous person stages through memory. Okay? How does that feel for you? Doesn't that feel much more intuitive? Doesn't that feel more grounded? So, psychological continuity. There's a chain of person stages connected by episodic memory, meaning you have a memory of some sort of episode experienced in your life. Since A, B, and C are psychologically continuous with each other, right? There's a chain, an unbroken chain. They are all person stages of the very same person. So if 1980 person has no recollection of being around 1970, then there's no justification for us right now saying we're the same person as 1970 person. But because we can follow our link and see that every past self has a memory of a past self, we can follow that link and trace our memories back to 1970. Right? This is how we can say you are the same person now that signed up for this class. Because maybe you don't really have a clear memory of actually signing up for this class, but we can link you from past selves through chains of memory to that person that signed up for this class. So how does this sit with you? For a lot of people, this is it. For a lot of people, this feels the most intuitive, right? That's what makes me me, is that there's this link, there's this chain of memories that has always been here, right? This entire time. So let's take a look at another thought experiment. Are you familiar with Star Trek? Star Trek, they have these devices called transporters, right? Transporters take a person and then turns them into energy, right? Because all matter can be converted into energy, and then takes that energy pattern and beams it to another location. It's a fast way of transporting yourself. You walk into a transport machine, and then your matter, right? The physical matter gets turned into energy, and that energy is beamed to another location, and then we put you back together in your material form, right? This is how the transporter works in the show. So if you walk in the machine and then step out of it, right, you'll have memories of stepping in the machine. So we say it's still you, right? You are psychologically continuous with the person that stepped into the machine. So would you do it, right? Would you use it? In the world of Star Trek, right, this TV show, this movie, they often get rescued by the transporter, right? The characters in Star Trek are get into trouble, and in order to escape the trouble, somebody aboard their spaceship beams them up back aboard the ship through the transporter. So you're running around being chased by monsters, and then you're like, "Save me! Somebody grab me!" And then the ship transports you back on board. The question is the person that was running away from the monster the same person that's back on board? According to psychological continuity, it's the same person because they share a chain of memories with the person that was running away from the monster, right? Psychological continuity says same person because we can follow a chain of person stages connected by episodic memory. So I'll ask you again, if you wanted a quick way to travel, like let's say Deanza said, okay, because of the pandemic, we're going to give everybody these machines. Would you use it? Would you use it to go to Vegas? Would you use it to commute to visit your parents? Would you use it to go maybe visit friends, go on vacation, and it's free to you because the answer decided, hey, we're awesome. We're going to give you a machine to use. Right? Would you use it? Sure, why not? Right? Sure, why not? It's fast, it's cheap. I don't have to worry about traffic anymore. Let's say one day you woke up and you saw a news alert, and the news alert said, uh, news alert, oh my gosh, we just found out that the transporter wasn't really a transporter. The transporter was actually a replicator. Replicator? You're like, what's a replicator? Continue watching the news clip because so what actually happens is that when you step into the machine, they don't take your matter and then beam you to another location. What actually happens is that when you step the machine copies you and then destroys you and then reconstructs you with the atoms and molecules in the other location. So when you walk in the machine, your body actually gets completely destroyed. Your matter, your energy does not get beamed anywhere. It just gets copied. The machine copies how you are put together and then takes the matter in Paris, the atoms around there, and then reconstructs you based upon the pattern, right? Based upon the design that it copied when it scanned you. What would you think about who you are? Would you go, oh my God, I'm not who I thought I was? If you're a psychological continuity theorist, what would you say? Right? If you're a psychological continuity theorist, well, you'd probably say, I guess it's still me because I remember everything that happened in the past. Right? Isn't that? Or would you feel really weird about that? Would you go, oh God, I don't know. It doesn't feel like it's me anymore. If you're a psychological continuity theorist, you'd say, no, no, it's I guess it's still me. Like, because I remember everything. I remember walking in, I remember walking in and out so many times, going back and forth to work. I guess it's me. How about something else? What if, because it's a replicator, it sent one of you to Paris and then it copied and recreated a you in London? Now, where would you be? This sounds like a crazy sci-fi scenario, but it's a scenario that brings up some problems with psychological continuity. And these are the problems that you're going to read about for next class when we take a look at philosopher Derek Parfit's analysis of psychological continuity and why it can lead to some nonsensical conclusions. And it's rather contradictory. Okay, so take a look at that, and I'll see you next time.